can't do.
Hi, this is Ravit Rose, founder of Iru. Super pleased to be here with my friend Paul, who is a dad of four in Northern Ireland. And we're here to talk about his experience with the divorce process. Now, I just want to remind you this is not an I hate my ex club situation. We're not here to trash anyone. We're here to talk about Paul's experience, the emotional turmoil, the lessons that he's learned. And the whole idea here is for this to be an educational piece for other men, dads more particularly. So we're going to go through like the process of, what it was like before he got divorced, like while they were married, during the separation, and now after divorce, he's been separated 3 years, divorced a year and a half. And in this short amount of time, he's already learned so much. So we're really happy to learn and to sort of dive deeper into like what has he learned? What would he have done differently? So thank you, Paul, for being here. Really appreciate it.
All right, all right. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, so why don't we start off with what was the your emotional state when you were married? Were you prepared for the divorce? Did it come as a shock? Like where were you at?
It was a shock. Yes, it was a massive shock. I wasn't expecting it at all. I wouldn't say that we had the perfect relationship, but I certainly didn't see it ending. Um, we were together 21 years. It's a long time, and four children is a big commitment. There had been incidents in the past which we'd overlooked, but the one that led to her leaving had been going on 2 years prior to leaving the property, which I didn't know about until after she went. But no, I was far from. I was definitely not prepared. It completely turned my life upside down.
Do you want to share more about like what took place? Okay, so now we're going into the separation. So what were the main pieces that turned your life upside down? And be as detailed as you're comfortable to be.
Um, well, 5 years prior to her leaving, she had an affair with a gym instructor, which I found out just literally tripped over some information one day, and I was like, well, that's a bit odd because she had my old phone account, and the phone account was really, really busy on a certain number, and I was, "Well, who are you ringing at like 1 o'clock in the morning? I'm laying next to you." Really odd. It sounds quite controlling of me, but it wasn't something I was constantly looking into. It was just a one-off, like major calls to this number. She then confessed and said that she'd been seeing a gym instructor, and that was like the floor had opened up for me, and I was like, I don't get it. Our normal routine, our life together. What is missing so much that you needed to find this elsewhere? And she turned around to me and she said, "I don't fancy you anymore." And that was like someone had hit a brick wall. I'd hit a brick wall. It floored me. It did floor me. However, we sat down and spoke about it. She broke down and cried. We agreed that the children were of such an age that we didn't need to, they were the focus, they were the priority, and not giving them that stability wasn't an option. So we stayed together. And on reflection, yeah, that was the wrong decision, without a doubt. There was never any heavy arguing. We never argued. It was a very, very. mm, I look back on it now and I see things differently to where I was.
How? How
Wh-
do you see that differently now?
When I was in the relationship, as far as I was concerned, everything was normal. It was all completely normal, and I was living a normal life. I had lost contact with my parents as a result of the relationship. There was arguments, and the ultimatum was her and the children or them. And I chose my family. I chose my immediate family, my children. And for 10 years, I didn't speak to my mum, dad, brother, or sister. Looking back on it now, why did I do that? Why would I alienate my own parents and brother and sister? There's no answer. My dad asked me the same question, and I've got no answer for him. I don't know. However, that normal life that I was leading wasn't normal at all. And lots of things have come out. This is named. Is narcissistic, I'm told. And when I looked up this narcissist thing, it was like, oh yes, yeah, yeah, that happens. Yeah, yeah, that's a tick. Yeah, I've seen that. That's happens. And all of a sudden, it was like mind blowing that I'd found out that I wasn't living a normal life. But it didn't happen until she walked out of the door. And the day she walked out of the door, I immediately went round my mother and father's, and they were there, open arms. What's happened? And they said, "Yeah, we saw this coming. We could have told you years ago that she was like that."
So you were
And
living like an illusion, like thinking that everything was peachy keen because you weren't arguing. Had you argued, maybe things would have been different.
there was never. I was very. I don't know whether the word submissive is right in the context, but I would always turn away from conflict. So if there was an issue that came up, she would deal with it, and I would not ignore it, but she'd take a lead and role with everything. I was out to work, she wasn't, and I was spending 6, sometimes 7 days out to work. I was there, I was back every night, but we never argued. It was just, but life became routine, as I know it does for a lot of people, and that routine wasn't normal. Um,
So your focus at that time was on work. If you're working 6 days a week, were you trying to build a business? Were you
I was trying to provide for 6 people, a dog and a cat, in quite an expensive part of Suffolk in UK. And as she didn't work, the agreement was until the little one was 5 years old, she'd never work, and she didn't, because it was, for us, that was the best way to start off a child's life, having stability at home. And we could just afford to do it as long as I'd done my bit. But it turned out that she never went back to work, and the only time she went back to work was the week that she left me. She went into full time work, and I'm thinking, if you'd have done that to begin with, I wouldn't be doing 6 or 7 days a week. But again, it's something that I didn't see at the time, and it's one of those things you look back on and question yourself, but never questioned it then.
okay? So it was what it was. I mean, that's what was accepted, and you felt like it was normal until all of a sudden she felt a disconnect, and all these things started to sort of open up for you. So had she not have had this affair that led to your separation, you would have probably still not been paying attention to what's happening. So, a lot worse could have happened over, all these years. Um, so do you
Yeah.
see it now as a blessing in disguise? Do you see it as something good, a positive outcome to something that wasn't
If
so positive?
if you'd asked me that at any point over the 2.5 years after she left, I'd have said, no, there's no positivity to it. We were building a life. We'd made the commitment to be. I didn't marry for part time. I married for forever. That it
Life,
says in
yeah.
the vows. It's there for life. And whether this comes into it, and I have been asked the same question before, but my parents are still married and happily married, and it's something that our family have always been consistent on. And she'd been through with her mother and father divorces and um, affairs, and yeah, I believe there's a lot within the family genes in that as well. Whether there's no proven facts or anything to it, but it just seems very odd that this all came about. It's something I've never even thought of. Never. That was a relationship for life.
But it could have also been that you were so busy working that you weren't paying attention to what was happening in the house or to what was the relationship and the dynamic between the two of you. Maybe you felt that you were still aligned because you were so hyper focused on work and providing and all of that that you weren't focusing on, the alignment between you and her. Could it be?
I, I contributed majorly towards the downfall of that relationship, and I'd done that through trying to provide for my family. So, yeah, I was oblivious to what was going on, and she had a lot of time to spare, and the affair 5 years prior to her leaving finished, was done and dusted when we argued about it, and that was the end of it. We moved on for the children, but then there's the second affair which led to her leaving, um, and that was going on with a 62-year-old man who she'd built a friendship with while she was out dog walking. And it wasn't until 2 weeks after she left that I found out from his wife what had been going on. She'd found messages and found evidence of them having an affair for 2 years. Now that just ripped the final part of my heart out. The fact that I always used to have a horrible dream. There's two things I used to have horrible dreams about, and they both came true. One of them, when I was a youngster, there was a shoebox in the bottom of my dad's wardrobe. This sounds really weird, okay, and off at a weird angle, but it's
I
relevant.
know.
And I that this shoebox had a monster in it, and this monster came out and grabbed me and pulled me into the shoebox. And every time I tried to shout, there no words were coming out. No one could hear me. I was just being dragged away. And that is exactly how I felt as I went through the family courts. No one was listening to anything that I said. Quite prominent. And the other thing that I used to have nightmares about was I was sitting on the stairs of my house that we all lived in, and they all walked out of the door. And I had this dream or nightmare probably for about 4 or 5 years prior to, whether it was around the same time as their first affair, I don't know. It was almost like I envisaged what they were going to do and they were all going to walk out. But the day she walked out with the children, I sat on them stairs, cried my eyes out, and that was like the whole world had just collapsed. I had nothing. What do I do now? I'd built everything with her over 21 years. How do you ever start again?
So it's very possible that your subconscious knew that all this was coming about and the signs were there in front of you, but because you were so preoccupied with other things, you weren't focusing on the signs that were literally in front of you.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do, and it's scary because you have this. Then all of a sudden this shock kicks in, and you're like, my routine, my life, my time with the children, family, everything is just gone. And then I'm going off to work. What's the point? Why would I go off to work to provide for who? And that void of providing has been my biggest challenge to try and fill, because obviously I'm still paying like child maintenance and stuff, and if the children never ping me over any messages, I'll send them whatever they need. I've had no communication with my ex-wife from the day she moved out. The only communication I've had is through lawyers and solicitors, and it has cost everything I've ever worked for. Literally everything. We within 5 years would have paid everything off and would have been mortgage free. Unfortunately, as a result of this and the fact they've refused house sales, we nearly lost the house. I've lost everything. I walked away with nothing from the relationship, and I should have walked away with a good part of £100,000. So should she.
So financially, it destroyed you.
Absolutely wrecked me, and something that I I envisaged at the start what we agreed on the day she moved out and prior to her moving out, the agreement stood, but she fought that and they said that there was no agreement. However, when it went to court, the court judged 50-50, but it was 2 years later. And 2 years later, we'd paid solicitors for 2 years on both sides. We'd lost a load of money. We ended up having to sell the house for cash instead of the offer that I'd originally got. We'd lost everything.
So how much do you think you spent in legal fees?
I would estimate she spent a lot more than me because there was a total of 237 letters from her. The I've got an A4 filing box of letters, and they were all really silly allegations. I would say, to cut to the chase, if we combined bill of about £65,000, and
Wild.
that is on top of the house sale loss. I sold it for 346,000, and we eventually sold it for 292, and
Oh.
we'd lost another £50,000 there. So all of our monies that we would potentially have to start up between us has gone. We've got no fresh startup. And that, at 53 years old now, has wiped me out. How do I ever start again?
So one of your greatest, okay, so your pain points like during the separation was all this chaos, lots of courts, so obviously a really acrimonious divorce and a process. Don't speak to her, issues with the kids. And then now that everything is finalized, you're officially divorced. The question is, how do I rebuild myself? What do I do with myself? Maybe you're asking yourself, like, who am I? What's my self-identity? What's my purpose in this world? My purpose before was to provide. I don't need to provide to a family in the traditional way. Yes, I
Yeah.
send over child support and maintenance and all of that, but who am I? Is that is that sort of
That's a very fair analogy, yeah. And people around me, like friends and um, even an ex-fiance, came back to me and said, you've got a fresh chance, you've got a fresh sheet, you've got a reset button that you've pressed, and away you go. You can start all over again."
yeah.
But even now, it's a struggle for me because how do you start all over again still? You're building those friendships and that through school, and I lost a lot of school friends. Getting everyone back into place again is hard enough, but now I've moved to, I was obviously in England when that happened, but I made the decision to get away because the children were being paraded in his car. He was following me. It was all really odd. So I had to get away. Now to start in a new country, a new life with new people is hard to start all over again.
And it's even hard if you stay in the same city or in the same town. So I can just imagine another country. So let me give you this sort of like puzzle analogy. So when we're married, we have like sort of different pieces and components that fit all together. We may not love what the overall picture looks like, but it fits. When we get separated, this puzzle kind of like breaks apart and it's no longer, you can't see what the picture of the puzzle looks like anymore. And now your role as a single parent or as an individual, not even a married couple, so just dad, not husband, but dad. Now your role is to start piecing all these things together to recreate and rebuild your life. So what
Yeah.
you're talking about is really natural, and it's a process that any person would have to go through, regardless of whether they had an easy divorce or a difficult divorce. Even if someone has like breaks off a marriage and has another significant other right away, they still have to go through this process. It's just going to look different, and the chances are that this new relationship of theirs is going to fail because they're not giving themselves the time to grieve and to start to restructure life. They're just sort of like arbitrarily and superficially like creating this picture image of everything is great with this new person, but in reality it's going to crumble because that's not how human behavior works. Like we need to actually take the time to piece it together. So where you're at right now, I think and I feel is that your greatest issue um is your self-identity, your lack of self-identity. Who am I? I've lost myself along the way. I should have paid attention. I didn't. All this stuff happened to me. And now who am I as an individual? And so since you haven't really been an individual, because you haven't been just Paul, you've been Paul, the husband and the dad, all these 21 years, now you're trying to figure out in a short amount of time, where am I? Now,
Yeah.
statistically speaking, it takes women 3 years to go through the divorce process to the point where they're really comfortable and feeling stable. For men, it takes 5 years. So you're
Oh, so I've
still
got another couple of years to go. Okay.
you're right in like the perfect process and the perfect timing to the point where the feeling of animosity the is starting to calm down. You're not hyper focused on like the solicitors and this and that and the craziness and the madness, whatever. And now you're starting to come out and breathe. And as you're breathing all this fresh air and you're trying to re-identify Paul, it might seem scary or daunting because you're like, I don't know where to go from here, but no one
Yeah.
does. No
No, it
one
really is
knows
scary.
what life after divorce looks like unless they had carefully, meticulously planned, before they decide to separate. But when it starts off like this and it's kind of like a spur of the moment shock, you have no choice
Mm.
but to extinguish the fires and then rebuild slowly.
Yeah. I'd say that's pretty spot on. Yeah.
Therefore, you're normal.
Anybody that knows me would contradict that, but we'll go with it.
No, but that's not, but they're talking about the old Paul. Now we have a new Paul.
Yeah, the reset button, Paul, and I get it, and I'm open to it, but there's also the drive to want to do it as well, and it doesn't feel as if the drive's there. I'm still I did go through some what you call it, some counselling, and the
Like
lady said to me, she
therapy,
said
therapy, like a
therapy,
therapist.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
therapy. And the
Okay.
lady said to me, she says, there's one thing I walked away with, and that she says, everybody in life has got a shopping basket. And that shopping basket is full of crap, basically. Don't take on anybody else's crap in that shopping basket. You've got enough weight to carry yourself. And I
Yeah.
was like, I like that. But now I'm very, very judgy, and I can't build relationships with anybody else now. I've tried on a few occasions, but I just now can't build relationships because I'm questioning everything. And you go through this process of like, I've never audited people before because that just happens as you go through life, does it not? And now I'm looking for this whole red flag thing and what's good about it, what's bad about it, analyzing everything. And I'm thinking, no, I'm overthinking everything. And I just need to just take life as it comes. That getting hobbies and starting a new life, not just getting into the routine of everything, it's really difficult.
So the issue with another relationship is probably that it's not working out because you're just not ready for it. You can't force yourself to be ready. Right now, what you need to do is focus on you. Who is Paul? What's your purpose in life? So your purpose the last 21 years was dad and husband. So
Yeah.
now, what is your purpose? That is your role. That is the whole purpose of this entire exercise and this whole experience of divorce was to say, Paul, wake up. Your marriage is not working. It's not right for you. And so, like I always say that life always gives us signs, and it's up to us to see the signs. And if we don't see them, then something bigger and greater comes and goes knock, 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 right? So it's kind of like you have a pain in your foot and you don't pay attention, like, yeah, okay, something's wrong with my foot. All right. So I ignore it, it'll go away. Then it starts to creep up your leg. You're like, wow, that really hurts. Like, what's going on with my leg all of a sudden? It's bothering me. And you're like, yeah, okay, so I'll ignore it as well. I'm too busy working. I'm too busy doing this and that, whatever. I don't have time to think about it. Bam, the next day something happens. You have like a blood clot. You're like, what? Where did this come from? I never knew. I never had signs. I never that. Well, you had signs. It came from your ankle, went into your leg, and you didn't pay attention. So what happens is that life comes and goes, knock, 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 wake the hell up. You're not paying attention. So
Mm.
this is what I believe. Oh, I just got shivers. So this is where this is your life lesson. You weren't paying attention. So now, rather than not trusting people, how about you just ultra focus on you, who you are, where do you want to be, what do you want your life to look like, and how do you get there? And when you know where your goal is in life and where you're going to, then you will find the right people, the right friends, the right hobbies, the right all that. But you need to have this future vision, right? So, like you're entrepreneurial, right? So, when you had your business, you had a business plan, you had a view where your business was going. How much did you want to earn, sales, this, that, whatever opportunities? Do the same thing for yourself. Create yourself like your own personal business plan and say, okay, Paul, I got to get myself out of this. I have to get out of this funk. And where do I want my life to look like? What do I want to do? Maybe I want to travel around the world. Maybe I want to buy cars. Maybe I want to this and that. Maybe you don't really want to get into a relationship right now and you don't have to. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be. Maybe just getting into the gym or a hobby or something can just get you out and doing something differently.
I get that. I do get that, and that is pretty much what an ex-fiance has said to me as well. She says, "Look, start again. You need to get out and do bits." She uses an example of where she moved to another town and she was like by herself, and it wasn't until she physically went out and went down the local pub and started to sort of interact with people and stuff. But that's just not me. It's not the old me. Potentially, it's the new me, but I'm I'm too stuck with the old me to try and shrug it all off. And I don't say I, yeah, I can see you.
Yes.
I'm too stuck. But how is that reset button pressed? It's so much easier talking
You
about
need
it
to
than
want
it
to
is
do
physically
it.
doing.
You need to want to let go of the old Paul that didn't work and that dynamic and that picture perfect life that you had. You need to get rid of that
Yeah.
as your future goal. That's not you. You are a whole new person. You get to recreate, redesign it. You need to remold Paul.
Yeah.
And it takes time. You can't force it. It's a process. You know what you could do is do some self-development. Take some courses on mindfulness, on emotional intelligence, on, men rebuilding themselves. There's tons of stuff online where you can, find some courses, some interesting things. And if you're more of an introvert or you're more of like like I'm not ready to go out into the real world, just do stuff yourself and immerse yourself in learning and evolving and transforming and becoming this best version of yourself. And when you're good and ready, all these other pieces are going to start to fall into place.
See, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. It really does. It's just starting off on the whole snakes and ladders thing and stepping on to step one. That first move is the hardest bit. But I'm going back to what you said about taking potentially 5 years. I'm thinking, yeah, I can actually see that now. I'm not going to wait for another 2 years to
Okay,
to
good.
potentially do things out. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, well, she told me it'll be 5 years, so I'll wait for another couple and then start then. I'm not going to say no to any opportunity that comes along. But what I have found, and I'm sure other people are in the same position, is motivation just goes. Your motivation disappears. I had loads of drive for extra businesses, um, different deals, different things going on, trying to better myself throughout, like you said, with education or college and taking on another course, another driving course, being a driving instructor, all sorts, loads and loads of things. I used to have loads of drive. Now I feel as if the drive's gone, the motivation's gone, and I have no desire. I almost feel as if, and no disrespect to anybody out there that is retired, I feel retired. I feel as if I've been there, done all that, and now I'm just taking a back step and going through the routine of life. I'm getting up in the morning, I'm showering, I'm doing my teeth, I'm going to work, I'm making me eggs on toast, I'm doing a day's work. Motivation for work is really, really hard as well to get that through that day. And I don't find as if I'm as focused as I used to be. The focus is just gone. Don't look at me as I'm not a lost cause. I do
I'm not
feel as
looking
if
as a lost cause,
no,
I'm
no, you're
thinking.
not. No, you're not. I'm saying all this negativity, but this is genuine. This is what's happening. This is what happened in sort of the last 3 years, and there's no way. And I've always said, the doctor asked me whether I had any negative thoughts about life and whether I would ever think about the awful thing of end of my life. I said no, never, never. But I have a greater understanding for people that do. I'm not condoning anything, but I understand. I always just think how bloody selfish. But if a lesser person that had been through my situation, and I'm not blowing smoke, but I don't think they'd have walked out the other side of it. I can see how that happens, but there is another side of it. There is a new life. There is a fresh start. It does take a bit of effort, and yeah, I would like to reinvent myself. I'd love to go traveling and buying cars. Have I told you those things or not?
Yes.
Oh, I told you. Right. Okay. I told you. I was like, how did you know that? But they're great examples because, yeah, I do. But since I've been in Northern Ireland, I've been buying and selling a few cars, was highly, highly motivated. And then it went into a dip again. But there's dips and troughs, isn't there? There's better times. And then there's times where you just think, I just need to just tick over today. I'll have a sofa day, watch crap TV, and eat popcorn
And Chinese food.
and Chinese food. And another thing I did learn through therapy is it's okay to be sad. It's okay
Yeah.
to cry. It is all part of a grieving process. And it is a grieving process. I have lost, and I still haven't got the relationship back with my children either. And that's another hard hit for me, a real hard hit. But no, I do believe, and as frustrating it is, not for you, but for friends of mine that look in and say the same thing. You got a fresh start. You got a blank sheet. Where do you want to go? I don't know where I want to go. I've got no idea of a path, and there's no books on any of this. But it sometimes it does take people like yourself and friends and family to say, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you look at this?" And those suggestions are invaluable.
So let me explain to you the innate difference between women and men. Um,
Go on,
men.
this is a good one. Please
So
do.
we're gonna go to the basic level, okay? So
Yeah.
women have a tendency to have anxiety, men have a tendency to be depressed. Depression and isolation is huge amongst men post-divorce. It is natural. And so what we do at IRUS is that we're trying to study human behavior and understand like why does this happen? You know, what makes someone stuck? What, you know, what can we do? What solutions can we provide and all of that. So I think this might explain things. Women have a tendency to always worry about the future. What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to have money? Am I going to have food on the table? Are my kids going to be okay? And whatever. They're always worried about the future. Therefore, they're prone to anxiety. Men have a tendency to always think about the past, the memories that I had, the person that I was, the things that I used to do. And they keep going back and reliving and rehashing the stories of the past. That's where you're at. And that's why
Yeah.
you're leading more towards like a depression state of mind because you keep thinking about the only person that I was and the only one that had any good quality of life is the old Paul. And you're the one who's actually not allowing yourself to move forward because you're comparing where you are today to where you were and you shouldn't be. You're supposed to be taking yourself from where you are now to where you want to go. So the future, you want to be happy? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Who doesn't?
You want to love and be loved?
I'm 50-50 on that one.
At some point, not tomorrow, at some point.
Yeah, jury's out.
Okay. You want to travel the world and go see cultures and go and do things?
Most definitely, but I do need to fund it as well. So there's another issue.
Fine. So funding. Financially, you need to rebuild yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about family? You've rebuilt your relationship with your family?
My mum, dad, brother, and sister is better than it's ever been.
Great. So that's something
My,
to
my,
look forward to.
my children, my daughter came over to visit me about 3 weeks ago, and that was a major, major step forward. That was my dream that they'd all come over on a 6 week holiday, or well, for a week during the summer holidays, and spend some time with me. The two little ones I haven't spoken to for 2.5 years. The two oldest ones, I've got good communication with my oldest daughter. My oldest son, I've got messages going backwards and forwards. There's a very small start to communication.
So who do you want to be and how do you want to show up when those kids are ready to come back into your life? Do you want to be the present Paul?
Obviously, I want to be the best version of me. Yes, of course I do.
Then that's your goal. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to become that best version of you so that you can be ready and ready to show up for your kids the day that everyone comes back. Because if you are not ready, they could be knocking on the door and you will not see the signs. You will not pay attention to the clues. That is your main purpose. Build yourself up to that best version and start getting ready for the time that the kids come back. They want to come visit you. You start going on vacation together. You start doing things and focus on your end goal. What do you want your life to look like? Imagine it, visualize it, see it, feel it, sense it, smell it.
Yeah.
Because I know you don't want to be where you are today, and I know that you don't want to be stuck.
No, I really don't. No, I don't. No, of course I don't. But it is taking that first step, and that's the hardest step in the world.
So start off tonight, because I know it's late, or tomorrow. Make yourself a list of who do I need to be, what do I need to do to be that stellar dad that I want to be? When my kids are back in my life, where do I want my life to be? And financially stable is definitely going to be one of them. Because you come
Yeah.
from a background of having that financial stability, that without that, you will feel like inferior because you're
Yeah.
used to that. Therefore, your second purpose is start building yourself up financially. Do what you need to do and get yourself out there. And your motivation every day is I'm going to rebuild my life as a single dad, getting myself ready for my 4 kids.
Yeah,
We
that's where
get
I
it
need to
all.
be. That's where I need to be. Yep,
Yay!
that is where I need to
We
be.
figured it out. You see how it's not hard. It's just about having proper direction and the proper thought process. So luckily you and I are friends and I'm going to nudge you all the time. But if we didn't, if we weren't friends and connecting on a regular basis, I would have suggested to have a divorce coach. Because the divorce coach's job is to get you to move forward and to keep inching forward rather than being stuck in yesterday and what happened and she said he did this and that, which is where you're stuck. And that old version of yourself.
See, prior to meeting you and having these conversations, I'd have said that was a load of rubbish. Having said that, now I can see a lot of benefits into it because you've got to bounce stuff off people and stuff as well. Because you've obviously done all this sort of stuff before, been there, done that. I'm probably fitting into a little peg that everybody goes through,
Oh,
and I
you're
know
not.
we're all a little bit different. I get that, but having someone with a bit of knowledge about how to move forward, what you want, it's the same as my oh god therapy lady. I don't know what you call it.
Therapist. Yeah.
Um, therapist is just I didn't believe in any of that. I thought that was just total rubbish. At the end of the day, men are supposed to be standing by their own. They're supposed to be doing their own thing. To have someone come along and assist you to do that, that's bloody brilliant. That's a brilliant, but not how a role of a male should be. But I've opened my doors to the therapist, and she's been brilliant. And so far, with my very little interaction with you, you've been very good as well, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. And so one of the old paradigms that men have is that, and this is why it takes men 5 years and takes them 2 extra years over women. Partly because A, they're stuck in the past and it's hard to release the past. And B is because they're alone and they think like you. And they believe that I need to be the man, I need to be the protector, I need to be the provider. Provider can't ask for help. Well, that doesn't work. And here you are, you were picture perfect man who was doing all of that. And all of a sudden that came crumbling down to make you more humble and realize, hold on, you're not the only person here. You need to think differently. You need to explore things differently. And you'll see how you'll discover so many beautiful things in life.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
shame. There's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in feeling like you don't need to go out and hunt like we used to way back. That's an old paradigm. It's an old way of thinking, right? Women go out, they work, they do that, they're not just stay at home. Okay, your wife maybe was, but the dynamic
that was
is
a
not the
choice.
same. Hmm?
Yeah, that was choice, a mutual choice. That wasn't something that we sat there
Yeah,
and it was as far as we were concerned, that gave the children the stability at home. And they're all great
yeah,
kids. They are all
yeah.
great children. They're all doing really, really well. Whether that was a result of that foundation of her being there or us as parents, I don't know. But whatever it was, or a combination of the two, maybe.
So I
Um,
can guarantee you when your kids come back, they're going to want to talk to you. As your kids get older, they're going to want to have these conversations. You need to be ready emotionally and have your 2 feet on the ground to have that conversation from a man who learned his lessons, especially your boys who may have, followed the old Paul's footsteps and thought, I'm a protector, I'm this, I'm that, I don't need to have any attachment to my emotions. Your job and your role is going to be to say, hey, you know what, son? You actually can let your guard down and you should. And this is what I learned. And these are the lessons that I learned along the way. That is the best
yeah,
life experiences that you can give to your son and to your daughters. Your daughters need to know that men have to be and should be a certain way, and life crumbles, and you've got to pick yourself back up, rebuild, and go on. The lesson for them to learn is dad fell, crumbled, and rebuilt himself an empire, whatever that empire looks like. Because
yeah,
they are going to come back and they're going to look to see your success.
yeah. I've got no words. I have no. I have no words.
Let it digest. Let it digest. Think about it. Sleep it off. Think about it over the next couple of days. There's a
Yeah.
lot that we said, but the whole idea was to find that one thing that was keeping you in this stuck mode. So now, what lessons have you learned in the last couple of years that you'd love to share with other men and fathers?
There was at the start lots of questions, lots of negativity, lots of sort of why did you do this? Why did you do that? And it gets you nowhere. It gets you absolutely nowhere.
So trying to
You
justify yourself or what she did.
trying to, yeah, justify, well, not even justify what she did, question and understand what she did, but it's all irrelevant. It is what it is, and there's a big saying, it is what it is. um you have to take everything on face value, and the hardest thing is to cut off and leave all that negativity behind. No point poking fingers and pointing fingers and being negative and saying she did this, she did that. Keep off social media. Don't be sitting there on social media and putting your life down on social media, because that just leaves you open, and that isn't part of the healing process. However, turning the corner, accepting everything as it is, and moving on and looking forward, like you say, not looking back, is a hard thing to do. But if you can do that, then you're 50% on your way to getting yourself sorted. Says he who's not really on his way to getting anything sorted yet. But I can get
You
it.
are.
I get it. I
You had an
understand it. I know where I want to be. I do want to be a better version of myself. Um, but then I also kind of like this semi-retired thing where I'm all relaxed and chilled out, and not really pushing for a great deal either. Just life is ticking over. But I don't want it just to tick over and look back and think there's so much more I could have done.
You don't want to regret ever. So really
No.
what you're talking about are the basis of emotions. Acceptance is one of the stages of the grief process. Once you get to acceptance, then your grief process is sort of like you're at the end of it. So you've accepted it, and now the next step is rebuilding, which is where you're at right now. So
Yeah.
that's a really good step. And then, when you talked about leaving all the negativity behind, did you find now in retrospect, did you find that while the divorce was going on and all of this chaos was happening, did you feel like you were always questioning why? Why is she doing this? Why? And
I,
focused on the hyper, you know, focus on why versus dealing with it and moving forward?
yeah, I put far too much energy into questioning everything, and not moving forward at all. And there was a lot of anger as well. Why has she disrupted what we had, our family life and our children and the plan for the future? Why has that all been disrupted? But there's never any answers to any of that. You've just literally got to accept and forget, and not focus the negativity on the other person. At the end of the day, they're moving on. We're 3 years down the line. She's done her bit now. In theory, she's moved on. I've still got 2 years to go.
Okay, like don't hold this in stone.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Savage. But the one important thing to realize is that as you're rebuilding, you're gonna realize that a lot of things don't really matter anymore, and then you're gonna discover new things that do matter.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so that hyper focus on why was because it felt good and cushy to be there while the chaos was going on. But what you actually did in hindsight is that you gave her more power. The more you focus on, why did you do this to me? And the finger pointing at her, you were giving her all the attention, all the attention, all the attention, all the attention that she was able to control matters. If you
yeah,
had a divorce coach, you would say, Paul, stop, stop, stop. Stop going there. Stop thinking that, this and that. Take your power back. Stop playing victim and stop allowing her to push you against the corner because you're in the corner and you can't get out. And you need
yeah,
to get back and like sort of playing offense and defense. You need to get back and play defense. You need offense, sorry. Stop being in defense mode all the time. And that's what you were. And I find that when people are too much in defense mode and in victim mode, the cycle continues and continues and continues because they can do it, because
yeah.
you give them all the power to do it.
So
without
where were
even
you 3 years
realizing.
ago? I blame you.
So I should have been in your life then. And then what about me? When I was divorcing, I didn't know what I was doing either.
It's you do need people do need to reach out.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah,
You
and
do
not only
need.
to friends and family. This is the biggest problem. You can't just reach out to your friends or whatever your family that's gonna be biased and tell you what you want to hear. You need someone that's gonna put you in your position and say, "Why are you doing that?" I'm not going to
Yeah,
agree. I'm going to agree to disagree with you, and these are all the things that are going to happen if you do that. So that
yeah.
accountability partner is the most important when you're going through a very contentious situation or when you're emotionally like up and down because you just don't know where you're going and what you're doing.
See, this is why I'm talking to you.
This is why like we're doing this, right? In parentheses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Spot on, spot on.
Yeah.
It is. It's good. You do need that person.
Yeah. Okay.
But I still blame you for not being there 3 years ago.
I'll buy you a stew. And you'll feel better.
Okay.
Um, Thank you so much for being here, Paul. I really hope that this was enlightening. I hope that this was helpful. You're going to digest this. Take your time. There's no rush. Stop putting the timer on for the 5 years. It is what it is. You just need to know that you're on target. And now you've had
Okay.
like this little push, and now it's time to wake up and do something
Shape
different.
up.
Shape up at your own pace, in your own way, but with direction. Even if it takes you time, as long as you're moving forward. Inching forward, one step at a time, every day, that's all that matters.
That's sound advice. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all for being here. I hope this is helpful to you. Until the next time we speak, I wish you a day that matters. Take care, everyone.